So today's session is going to be an introduction to Rhino. We're just going to wait for everybody to log into their computers. So you're welcome to follow along with my tutorial today. You're also welcome to just watch it and try to take stuff in. I'll try to go at a pace that is good for everybody so that you understand and you can follow along. But today's session, we're going to be looking at an introduction to Rhino. And so my background with Rhino began really in 2009. So 2009 is when I first started using Rhino, so many, many years ago. And so the benefit of me learning Rhino has been absolutely wonderful for my career in architecture, because I think that really for me was the start of when I began to expand my knowledge or understanding of digital design when I was starting to learn Rhino. And then it led me to go on to study at the Architectural Association. I then went and studied at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, and I worked at Coop Himmelblau over in Vienna as well. So this was really the beginning for me, was learning Rhino with my computational design career. So I went down to the DRL school down in London at the Design Research Lab in 2010, and I saw what they were doing there, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to learn how they do that. So how do we do it? So I went to speak to a few students after the workshops after their crits, and they said they were using Rhino and Grasshopper. And so that was it for me then. I was like, right, I've got to go learn that software. So I went to London and I became a Rhino certified level 1 trainer. And then I went to Barcelona, I became a Rhino certified level 2 trainer. So then I was able to then teach other people how to use Rhino. So then I consulted for a number of companies in architecture and in product design and furniture design, and I taught them how to use Rhino as well. So I've got quite a lot of background with this software, and it's a software that I really love and I feel really passionate about. So I'm really excited for the opportunities that I have to be able to teach it to you today. So first things first. As with any software, we need to begin by understanding our user interface. The analogy that I often give to people with a new software, it's like going on a journey for the first time. And the first time you go on a journey, you're not going to notice every little thing on that journey. You're not going to pick up everything. But each day that you travel the same journey, you're going to learn more and more and more. And that's exactly what it's like with software. The more we use it, the better we're going to become at understanding and knowing the tools that are available to us. But what I'm going to begin with today is, in my introduction to Rhino, is just showing you very quickly on the website for Rhino 3D. We have some great resources available. And we can also download a copy of Rhinoceros 3D. And we have Rhino level 8, Rhino 8 now. And I began with Rhino 3, actually. So it's been a long time since I've been using Rhino. So we're on Rhino 8 now, and we can download it for free here on the Rhino website. And we get a 90-day evaluation. So we can use it for free for 90 days. And after that, I think it costs about 195 euros for a student's license. So we can download it from here. But if you want to own a copy, I bought a copy when I was in undergrad in 2009, and I've used the same copy ever since. And each time I want to upgrade it, I just pay 95 euros. So I've upgraded it once in the last 15 years. So that just gives you an idea. In my opinion, it's really worth just paying for it and just having access to it, and then you've always got access to it. It's really, really great. So we also have other tools and resources for Rhino, because Rhino is one of those softwares that uses a lot of plugins. And so we have something that's called Food for Rhino, which is another website that I'll show you. And this website is where we can find lots of different plugins for Rhino. So just like your mobile phone, your cell phone becomes much more powerful as you download applications, Rhino also becomes much more powerful as we download different applications. So in and of itself, Rhino is a really powerful tool, but then when we start to download the different applications that are available, like Grasshopper and lots of other of the plugins there, it becomes even more powerful of a tool that we can use. And just to give you an idea, the kind of companies that use Rhino predominantly, I have a lot of friends that are working at UN Studio right now. And UN Studio is probably a great example of a company that uses Rhino, only Rhino predominantly with its workflow in Revit. And they produce sort of the kind of geometry that you would expect that we can start to create using something like Rhino, something like this. And I'm going to teach you and show you how we can start to create these types of things. But to begin with, we're just going to go through our introduction. So that just gives you an idea. Obviously, another great example is the Zaha Hadid architects, where they use Rhino and Grasshopper in a lot of their work with Maya. And so they'll use Rhino and Grasshopper. I mean, this is something that we can very quickly and easily do within Rhino and Grasshopper. So we can create facades and do all kinds of stuff. So that's really one of the exciting things. So that's what we can do with Rhino. That gives you an idea of the kind of what you're aiming towards. If you want to go work at some of these big companies, like Zaha Hadid Architects, UN Studio, MAD in China, or some of the other firms like Foster's, they all use Rhino. Go ahead. If we can record. My OBS is on record, so I'm using a software that's recording the session today. So I'll put it live later. So yeah, it is recording, but it's just not recorded through Teams. So without further ado, let's just get into the software itself. So when I open Rhino, when you open any software, you're presented with lots of new information. And who here has used AutoCAD before? So pretty much everyone. If you can use AutoCAD, you can use Rhino very, very easily. Because a lot of the functions and the commands are very similar to the ones that we find in AutoCAD. So it's geared towards it's a CAD software that was predominantly began in the product design and bolting industry. Rhino actually began as a bolting software that was used by bolting engineers to create bolts. And then as people saw the application of this software, they saw that they could start to use it within other industries. And then we started to borrow from those other industries within architecture, and we began to use those softwares. And that's how we can create more organic forms. So let's just have a look at the user interface first and foremost. The user interface is broken up into a few different areas. And I'm just going to briefly explain to you what each of those are. So as with any software, we have the ribbon along the top, and you would see and find in there anything that you would typically find in any software. You've got your file where you can import, save documents, and so on. We've got edit, where we can run edit commands within the software. We've got view, so this controls our view. And then these next 5 tabs are really important. And the reason that these are really important is because I want you to sort of compartmentalize in your brain for a second that these 5 tabs, if you just kind of drew a rectangle around them, these 5 tabs are really important. So it's curve, surface, sub-D, solid, and mesh. Because this is where we're going to be able to create all of our geometry in Rhino. So this is where we create all of our geometry, either using curve, surface, sub-D, solid, and mesh. So if you kind of just create like a rectangle around those, then that really helps you understand this is where I'm going to start creating my geometry. The next tabs along the top is we've got dimensions. So we can dimension things in Rhino just like we can in AutoCAD. And we can annotate our drawings. So we can put annotations on there. And then we have our transform command. Now transform is the typical command that you might find in like AutoCAD. What might you be able to do with the transform command in like AutoCAD or any other softwares that you might have used? What typically might you see or be able to do with a transform command?
Change the geometry of the
Yeah.
plane or like.
Yeah, so you could change where things are. So one thing I want to differentiate as well is there's editing geometry and then there's transforming geometry. Okay, so I'll talk to you about the difference between editing and transforming. Anyone else have any ideas about transform?
Rotate.
You can rotate, yeah, you can rotate things. What else might you be able to do with transform? I mean, there's a clue on the screen because I've got it open. Scale. So all those things that you would typically expect within a software, where you can scale, copy, rotate, move. These are our transform commands. Okay. Now, the reason that I'm differentiating between transforming and editing is because editing is something slightly different than transforming. Transforming is where I'm taking my geometry and I can move it and I can edit it with some of the transform commands, but I'm usually working with already existing geometry. Yeah, and we'll differentiate that. So that's the transform command. And then we have this tools tab here, which gives us a lot of the tools that we can find within Rhino. For example, Grasshopper, Rhino script, Python script. We're not going to go into that in too much detail today, but just so you're aware of what is in there. And then we have this analyze tool here, where we can analyze our geometry or our data or our model within Rhino, and we can begin to analyze certain aspects of it. So for example, we can analyze curves or lines. We can analyze surfaces and check them. And I'll show you how we can use some of those analyze tools later on. Then we have the render tab, where we can use Rhino's built-in renderer, or if we have another renderer that we've downloaded, for example, if we go to current renderer, we can see that Rhino is the main renderer there. If we were to download V-Ray for Rhino, for example, this is where we would typically find V-Ray for Rhino within Rhino if we want to change from Rhino's built-in renderer to V-Ray. Okay? And then finally we have panels, and this just helps me to set up my user interface. So you can see right now what is ticked on within my user interface and what is not yet ticked. And according to how you want to use your Rhino interface, you can just click on any of these and it will just bring out a panel there. And then we can also begin to dock them, so you can start to build your interface according to how you use the software the best and the most. And we can then begin to dock some of these panels here. And if we just close it, then it'll just close it again. So that's our panels. And then help is a really useful thing, because within our help tab, we have all the different help topics for Rhino. And I'm going to just very quickly show you that whenever I'm using Rhino, if there's anything that I don't know or understand or want to learn more about, the help is a really useful tool. So I can either go to help topics here, I can go to learn Rhino and it will give me tutorials and sample files. And if I want to utilize some of this help topics, it will just take me to a reference of all of the Rhino documentation, and it will have all of the different tools that I can use, all the different functions, all the different commands within Rhino, and I can access that through the web as well. So that's the panel bar along the top. Any questions about that? Quite comprehensive? Makes sense. It's not as difficult as it initially looks. Hopefully we're going to demystify a little bit this interface. The next part of our interface is we have this command line. And then we have an opportunity within Rhino. There's 3 ways. I always tell people there's 3 ways to do anything in Rhino. We can either use the menu bar along the top. Let's say I wanted to create a curve. I can do it along the top. I can type it here in the command line, or I can use the graphical icons that are there. But they all do the same thing. So I can either type it, use the menu bar along the top on my ribbon, or I can use the graphical icon. Whichever way you do it, you will figure out what works best for you. But typically, a lot of us type a lot of our command. And I'm just going to show you the command line right now and what is contained within that. So every single command in Rhino can be typed. So just to give you an example, it has autocomplete on within here. So as I start to just type A, for example, you start to see this comprehensive list of all the different commands that begin with the letter A. And this is the full list of the letter A. So what I want you to do, just very quickly, just go through the command line and just go through the alphabet and just see B. And let's see what B functions are available, what B commands are available. And then let's do C. And then you see all of the different C commands that are available that begin with the letter C. And then D. And these are all of the different commands, and it has autocomplete set on. So as I start to type my command, if I type D and then E, it will only bring up anything that begins with D and then E. So it has autocomplete on. And so if you ever were struggling, or if you're ever bored one day and you think, I just want to go check out all the different commands in Rhino, feel free. The beautiful thing about these softwares is you're not going to kill anyone or hurt anyone by playing around with them. Just play around with them. That's the best way that you're going to be able to learn any of these softwares, is just playing around. Just have a go. So if you're ever struggling or you're ever wondering what's available, then just go through the alphabet and just see what pops up there. So that's our command line. Any questions about that? Does that? Yeah? Great. So that's our command line. As I said a moment ago as well, we have three ways to do things. First one, menu bar. Second one, command line. Third one, we can use graphical icons. So contained within in and around our viewport in Rhino, we have these tabs. And the different tabs contain different graphical icons relating to the different commands that tab can do. So for example, if I just open up the transform tab for a moment, it will contain very much the same information that is also contained within my transform along the menu bar. So whatever I see along the menu bar along the top there, I will have a graphical representation somewhere along here. Or, if not all of the commands are there, the most commonly used ones will be there. So it'll be the most commonly used commands that relate to that will be there in the graphical icons. So that's another way that we can see what else is available to us. So we've got all of these different tabs here, and we can also change which tabs and which toolbar that we want to show. And if we just click on this cogwheel along the tabs along the top of the toolbar, we can see where it says show toolbar. We'll have a comprehensive list of all the different commands that we can place within that toolbar. And this is just an idea of all the different things that we can put in that toolbar. Okay? And that will often relate to some functions and some commands that we can perform within Rhino. So that's this toolbar along the top and the tabs, and we can just show which toolbars we want to appear there. Over here, I've actually loaded in Twin Motion. So what you see here actually doesn't come as default in Rhino. This is just for me to export my 3D models to Twin Motion. So we can dock things and we can undock them here in the toolbar. So if I wanted to remove anything from here, we can undock items and we can redock them as well. So that's the tabs. I'm going to just go to the left-hand side now. On the left-hand side, you'll see that these are our most commonly used commands that we'll find within Rhino. We can set that up to have whatever we want on it, or if we just click on any of the, some of the different tabs here will also contain lots of other ones, but these are just the most commonly used commands that you would typically use within Rhino on the left-hand side. So these are just the most commonly used ones. Then along the bottom, you might have Rhino 8. If you have Rhino 8, you might have the equivalent to what I have here on the left-hand side, just at the bottom. So if you look in the bottom left of your screen, you'll see these different tabs. Now these tabs are our object snap tools. So who knows what object snap is? Does anyone know what an object snap tool is? It exists within AutoCAD. Exactly. So we can set it up to snap to either a grid line or an existing object. So these are all the different ways that we can snap within our Rhino. We can snap to the end of an object, to the nearest point within an object, to a point to the middle of a line, for example, to the center. Let's say we have a circle, we can snap to the center. We've got intersection, so where two planes or two lines intersect one another. So these are our object snap tools here. And we can turn those on and off how we see fit. And if you want to turn them all off at once, we just click on disable, it will turn them all off in one go. And if we click disable again, it will re-enable all of those commands. But you might have them in the bottom left of your screen, whereas mine is Rhino 7, so it's just at the bottom here. Okay, so that's the object snap tools. And then as we start to come to the bottom of the screen here, we'll see that everything in Rhino exists within this workspace in the Euclidean mathematical calculations. So it uses X, Y, and Z coordinates to be able to specify where you are. So if you want to know where you are in a Rhino model, if I'm just hovering over here, can you see at the bottom of my screen it says I'm in the C plane, and then it tells me where I am in the X and where I am in the Y. Can you see that in the bottom left of the screen as you move your mouse? Now go to the top view and see how that changes. Let's go to the perspective view and see how it changes. And then we can go to the right view and see how it changes. And then you can see how that will update in real time. Then along the bottom here we can turn our grid snap on and off. We can turn ortho on and off. Does anybody know what ortho is? So orthographic projection, so it derives from the same principle as an orthographic projection, but it's in this instance, you can move things orthogonally. So it snaps at 90-degree increments. So when something's orthogonal, it means it's straight at 90-degree increments. Okay? So that's we can snap things or we can move, and I'll show you how that works anyway. We've got planar, which is I'll explain how it works. We've got smart track, so when I'm doing something, I'll show you how that works as well. And we have our gumball, and the way our gumball works, if I place something in the model and I turn my gumball on and off, if I turn my gumball off, I now have to manually move this object by typing the command move. If I turn my gumball on, I can begin to control and manipulate this geometry from within my viewport. That's a really useful little tool. We've got the gumball, and we can turn it on and off down here. Okay? And then we have record history, which was the precursor to Rhino, to Grasshopper. So does anybody know the origin of Grasshopper 3D? No? Well, it began with the record history command in Rhino. So what essentially happened is they would, let's say they wanted to manipulate something. Let's say, for example, I'm just going to very quickly just show you a very brief example. Let's say, for example, I create a curve here, and I extrude this curve upwards. So I'm going to type extrude curve, and I extrude this curve upwards. I'm just going to change the view setting here. And let's say, for example, like, no, I don't really like that surface. I want to manipulate my original curve, and watch what happens now when I move my original curve. My curve behaves independently to my surface. So my curve and my surface behave independently of one another. But with the record history command, what I can do, before I run the command of extrude, I can turn my record history on. Then if I run my extrude curve and go up, because my record history was on when I ran that command, if I move this now, you can see that my surface moves with my curve. So that's what they used as a precursor to Grasshopper. They said, okay, well, how can we expand on that record history? And that's what spawned Grasshopper, which became parametric design. So parametrically, our surface is moving in accordance with our curve. So they're parametrically linked. And that's how parametrics works. And that's the precursor to Grasshopper. So hopefully that makes sense. That's the record history command. And then we have filters. So we can turn our filters on and off. So if we turn our selection filters on and off, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. These are selection filters. So if I just want to only select curves, for example, when I'm hovering over here and I select, it's only going to select my curve. it's not going to select any of the surfaces. So that's how we use the selection filter. Okay? And then on the right hand side, this is where we have our properties, our layers, we have our rendering information, we've got materials information, we've got files or libraries here, and we have our help tool here as well. Now this is really, really useful. So make a note of this, because if I go over to my help command over here, and if I start to run a command within Rhino, you'll see what happens to my help tab over here. It updates relative to the information of the command that I'm running. So it will tell me exactly how to use this command over here, and it will give me some examples of how it can be used, and it will also give me steps, and then it will also tell me what it links and relates to. Okay, so that's the help tab here. We can turn that on, and whatever command we are running, it will give us some information about it and tell us how to do it. It'll give a little video how to do it step by step. So that's something that's also really useful within Rhino. And then finally we have notifications. Now again, we can adapt our user interface how we want. So again here, we can turn on or off the different panels that we want to appear here. So let's say we want to get rid of one or we want to add one. Let's say for example, I want to be able to control my sun. In the file, I just clicked on the cog and I just added the sun just over there. But the way that our Rhino models work is they work and behave very, very similarly to the way AutoCAD works. So nothing exists until you make it exist. And we also love to create some hierarchy and organization within our models by using layers. So layers is the predominant way that we will set up our things in Rhino. Questions? What questions do you have so far? Go ahead. This right-hand side thing, do you have it? Is it on yours? Let me have a look. So if it's not there. So just for everybody's benefit, if for whatever reason your properties are not appearing here. Let's say, for example, we've done this. We've pulled it out. We've lost our panel. We don't know where it is. All we need to do is go to the top menu bar at the top, click on panels. If we click on properties, for example, it'll bring our properties window back, and then we can just pop it straight back there. So if it's missing, that's how we can get it back. Yeah? Why doesn't the Z-axis move? Do you mean down here at the bottom? That's a good question. I'm not sure why it doesn't move specifically, because it probably should. X, Y, Z, but yeah, it should. It should, and I don't know why. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that question. Yes? Sorry, can you speak up? The panel? Yeah. So if we lose our panel and it's missing, then we can just click on panels here, and we can either click layers or properties. And if I click layers, for example, it will bring that panel back. So I just go to panels and click on layers, and it will bring that panel back, and then I can just drag it and pop it straight over to the right hand side. Yeah.
When we do a extrusion of the plane or something,
Yeah.
how do we put in the dimensions? Like how
Okay, so I'm going to show you how we're going to be modeling things here shortly. So I'll go through step by step how we're going to model things. So we'll come to that. Yeah. Any other questions before I move on? (3D). So I'm going to show you how to create geometry in a moment. What I want to do for this initial part is just go through the user interface. And then when we've gone through the user interface, I'll show you how we create geometry, how we can edit geometry, and how we can transform geometry. They're the main 3 tasks that we're going to focus on today. If you don't have the O-snap bar there, then are you on Rhino? Are you using Rhino 8? So again, go to panels, and let's just see if we can find where the object snap panel is. If anyone sees it before me, then just give me a shout. If it's not there, it could be over here in the show toolbar. You find it? Where is it?
It's on the bottom.
On the bottom? Ah, okay. Perfect. Great. Okay, so that's the user interface around. Has that begin to demystify Rhino for you a little bit? Yeah? Great. So what I want us to focus on now is just these 4 windows in the center. This is our viewport. And I'm going to just quickly show you how we can use our viewport. And I want you to go do this with me. You know, we'll go at the same time. So if you just double click on the blue top left corner of each of the viewports, it will maximize that viewport. If I double click it again, it will minimize it. If I double click on the top, for example, it'll do the same. Okay? So these 4 work independently of each other. And we have the perspective view, we have a top view, we have a front view, and a right view by default in Rhino. That's what it'll bring in by default. If we look in the bottom of the screen, there'll be 4 tabs as well that relate to which one of those screens is active. So I'll just ask you a question. If you just look at the top corner, what do you see happening as I click the different tabs? So the selection changes and it highlights it in blue. So when it's highlighted in blue, I know that that is my active viewport. So if I scroll my mouse in there, I can zoom in and out, for example, because that's the active viewport. If I move over here and just start scrolling, it will make that viewport automatically active. Same again over here, same again over here. So if I double click on there, I can also create new views if I want to. So I can create new views. So if I double click here, if I go click on the plus icon, I can create, I can split for example, if I go to the top view, let's say I want the right and left, for example, or top and bottom. If I just do the plus icon there, I can split this vertically, and now I have right, and I can set the view, but I'm going to do left this time. Yeah, exactly. So that gives you a view of all of your different viewports. And so within the perspective, you'll be able to see all of the geometry that we create within here in all these other viewports. Okay? So let's say we have a piece of geometry in there. And let's say that all my viewports are like zoomed out in different ways. I can just right click on here. And I can do zoom. Where is it? Pan, zoom, rotate. Zoom extents all, and it will zoom the extents in all of my screens. So if we right click on the top left corner, we have all of these different view settings and also camera settings, and we can run those from here. So if I just maximize my viewport, I'm just going to show you the different view settings that we have within Rhino. So we have wireframe, which will show my model as a wireframe. We have shaded, we have rendered, and you can change the background to whatever you want in your rendered view. We have ghosted, which gives it more of a transparent effect of my geometry. X-ray, which is similar to ghosted. Technical, which makes it more like a technical drawing. We've got artistic. We've got pen. We've got Arctic mode, which is an ambient occlusion, which can be really useful when you do like diagrams and things like that. That can be really, really useful. And then we've got ray traced, which is more like a real-time rendering. But I recommend that you stay within shaded whilst you're modeling, because it can be quite heavy on your machine if you're modeling whilst it's trying to render or whilst it's trying to do one of those other views. So that's how the different viewports work. In terms of navigation, what I would like you to do is, let's just very quickly just create a box, just similar to what I've done here. And I'm just going to show you the navigation tools very quickly in Rhino. So everybody, create something. So if I scroll my middle mouse wheel, it will move in and out wherever I point my cursor. So if I put my cursor over here, it's going to scroll to that point. Yeah? if I put my cursor over here, because I want to view, it'll go to wherever my cursor is. So if I just go there, and it will move to wherever I put my cursor. If I squeeze my right mouse button, I can pan around. Yep. If I hold shift and squeeze my right mouse button, I will pan left to right, up or down. Yep. If I hold control and my right mouse button, I will do what they call a dolly. So does anyone know what a dolly is? Yeah? But within the film industry, does anyone know what a dolly is? It's like, but the camera's on a track. So it stays constrained to one track, but zooms in and out. So that's our dolly, using the Alt. And then let's say, for example, I lose my model, and I'm like, it's in outer space somewhere, and I'm like, I don't know where my model has gone. I can right click on here, I can go to pan, zoom, and rotate, and I can just do zoom extents. Typical. It says no objects are visible right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to try to select my object, so I can see that there's an object there. So this time I'm going to do zoom selected. So pan, zoom, rotate, zoom selected. Typical, innit? 1 second. Never works when you want it to. So what's happened is I've gone backwards. I've pressed Control Z too many times, and I just have my my point that I'd created previously. So it doesn't think I've got anything selected because there's just a point that exists there. But if I just go back here, and if I just, for example, go in my top view, I can see that I've got my point there. Let me just create that again just so I can demonstrate it for you correctly. So I'm just going to extrude that up. So now I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to do pan, zoom, rotate, zoom extents all, and it will zoom extents. So if I lose it again, let me just try that again. If I lose it, I can go right click on here, and then do pan, zoom, rotate, and then do zoom extents, and it will zoom to the extents of the geometry that's in there.
Why didn't it work
I pressed Control Z too many times, so I undid my geometry. So there was no geometry that existed in the file. By the way, that is actually a useful thing. So we can undo and redo in here, and it's the same as any of our other softwares. Control Z, Control Y, undo, redo. And I just did Control Z too many times. That was it. Just as simple as that. Okay. Everybody happy with that? That's our viewport. So now you have the basics of Rhino interface. And what I would like us to do now is just start to teach you how to create geometry. Okay? So let's get straight into that now. That's what we're going to do next. So remember what I said earlier. I mean, I pointed out 4 tabs or 5 tabs along the top that we really are going to use mainly to create geometry if we're not typing our commands. So we have 4 different types of geometry that we can work with within Rhino. 5 technically, but I'll explain to you what the difference is. So we have points. So if I just click on a point here, we have points. By the way, if I just squeeze my right mouse button, it repeats my last command. So you can either press Enter, space bar, or just tap your right mouse button once, and it'll repeat your last command. Or it behaves like Enter. So for example, rather than me having to lean over to my keyboard and hit Enter, what I do is when to end a command, I'll just click, and then I'll tap my right mouse button just like one time, and it behaves the same way that Enter would. And then that way I don't have to keep lifting my hand off my mouse, which is a really useful tool. So we have points, and then between 2 points, we have curves. So curves are made up of points. And then from curves, we have different types of curves. So for example, if I go to the curve menu up here, These are all the different types of curves. Now, when I'm talking about curve, I'm not talking about an arc. I'm talking about a geometric line between 2 points or multiple points. And we refer to those as curves. So when I say curve, I'm referring to line geometry. Yeah? So these are all the different types of curves that we can create in Rhino. So we have lines, and these are all the different types of lines and how we can create them. We have polylines, we have rectangles, polygons. So rectangles, we can just draw rectangles. Curve, if I just go to polygon, we can create polygons. I can specify the number of sides. Here, if you look in my menu bar up here, I can specify it to be in a 6-sided polygon. So we've got points, and we have curves. Okay? From my curves, I can also create surfaces. So if I go to surface, and if I click planar curves, it will create a surface from my curves very quickly. And unlike SketchUp, SketchUp is a mesh-based software. So whenever I create geometry, it merges into the previous geometry that I've created. Whereas in Rhino, it's super clever because everything is mathematically calculated. What it does is it creates our surfaces independent of our curves. So that way we can keep our curves, we keep our surfaces, and it's always creating new geometry each time. Okay, so then the other thing that we can create is solids. So for example, if I just extrude these surfaces straight, I can create solids. But again, if I hold shift while I'm selecting, I can select multiple items. So these are the 3 main types of geometry that we work with in Rhino. We have points, curves, surfaces, and solids. Now, the difference between a solid, let's say, for example, by the way, as I'm dragging, if I hit Alt, it will copy it across. If I hit Alt one time, it'll copy it across. Let's say, for example, these guys here, I'm just going to explode them. Yeah, and I'm going to get rid of the top surfaces. And then I'm going to join it back together. So these are individual surfaces now, when I explode it. But then when I join it back together, they're now what we call poly surfaces. So we cannot call it a solid. Why can we not call this a solid? Exactly. So it needs to be watertight. So think about it. Has anyone done 3D printing before? Yeah? So what are you taught about your model in 3D printing?
There needs to be no spaces.
No spaces, no gaps, no holes. It needs to be watertight. It needs to be enclosed. And it's the same in Rhino. A solid is only a solid as if it's entirely enclosed. Okay? Otherwise, it's a poly surface. So these right now are poly surfaces, not solids. These are also poly surfaces, but they're solid. Does that make sense? They're still poly surfaces because it's a series of surfaces, but because it's enclosed and watertight, it's solid. Go ahead.
Sorry, I can't get back to the 3 axes that you've got when I select
So click on gumball at the bottom of the screen. If you click your gumball on at the bottom of the screen, you'll be able to turn your gumball on and off. So if you select an item, and if I turn my gumball on and off, down here at the bottom of the screen, just click on it, you'll see that it'll appear. Go ahead. So if you want to change the view setting, for example, a lot of you might have this right now, where you can only see that. So what we need to do is we just need to go to the top left corner, just right click on it, and we just need to change our view setting to shaded. So you've just got the lines. Yeah. So you're just creating lines right now. You're just creating a polygon. Yeah. Right, so I'll show you what we're going to do. So right now, I'm just showing you the different types of geometry. And then we're going to actually start making some ourselves. Now, one of the things, really important things to understand, we also have these two other types of objects that we can create within Rhino. So I'll create a primitive sub-D. I'll just create that. And I'll also create, I'll just get this. I'll just copy these two across really quick. I'll just put my gumball on. And as I start to move it across, if I hit Alt as I'm moving it, it'll create that. And then from that, I can just create from mesh from NURBS, more polygons. There we go. So these are now meshes. And I'm just going to show you what that means. Oh, sorry. Okay, so if you see here, I've also created another type of geometry, which is the sub-D. And this, we're going to have a full session on sub-D later on. But if we look here at the sub-D and sub-D tools, we can start to play around with these faces here. If I just go select faces, and then it starts to behave like I can manipulate geometry here. That's a sub-D. So that was just in the sub-D, and I just created a primitive, like a box, or you can create a sphere, whatever you want. I'm going to give you a chance in a second to just play around with some of these as well. And then in my sub-D tools, I just made sure that faces were selected, or I can go down here and just do faces. But if I just go to sub-D and just this arrow across, I can selection filter faces. I can select a face, and then I can move it up. But Anna's going to do a full session on that in the near future. Okay? And then we have meshes as well. So these are meshes. And meshes, essentially, it creates a surface, but it triangulates a surface, or we can use quads. And it works the same way as a raster file does versus vector. So Rhino is NURBS modeling. So we use what we call NURBS. Does anyone know what NURBS are, or what that means? No? So the way that Rhino works is it uses NURBS modeling. So all of these here are NURBS. And when I create, for example, if I was to create a sphere, you'll see that there'll be a seam on my sphere. And the reason that there is a seam on my sphere is because it's being mathematically calculated like a single piece of paper that's being folded in on itself. If that makes sense. So it's almost like a single piece of paper that's being folded in on itself, mathematically calculated. Just like vectors. So the way that vectors work in Illustrator, this is how NURBS work in Rhino. They're mathematically calculated. So that's why we can get such accurate geometry. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just very quickly show you. I'm quickly going to show you. If we want to create curves, we have the curve menu here, and these are all the different types of curves that we can create. If we want to create a surface, we can create surfaces from curves, but we can also create surfaces independently. Also, with solids, we can create solids from curves and surfaces, and we can create solids independently. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So we can create surfaces from curves, we can create solids from curves, we can create solids from surfaces. That's the hierarchy of how that works. And we also can create them independently. So the way I would do that is, let's say for example, there's two ways I can create stuff in Rhino. I can either create it from nothing, or I can use a reference piece of geometry to help me to create it. So for example, let's take our curves. Let's say I want to create a surface from this curve. The way I would do that is I would use the extrude curve command, or extrude, or you can even just type it. Let me just see. Extend curves. Oh no, sorry. What you've got to ask yourself is, what am I creating? Okay? So ask yourself in your head, what am I creating? If I'm creating a surface, I need to go to the surface tab. So I need to go to the surface tab, then I go to extrude curve and straight, and then when I extrude that up, it will extrude it. Yeah? So if I want to create a solid from the same thing, if I do extrude planar curve straight, now it'll create a solid. What's not selected? Your filter, your selection filters might not. You see how your selection filters are on here. Yeah. So I'm going to give you just five minutes, and whilst I come round to everybody, just have a play around at just creating some geometry. And the main commands that I was using there is I was just in the curve tab and I created curves. If I want to create a curve from a surface from a curve, I can just like extrude it, or I can also create a surface on its own, independent. So corner points, I can create a surface. So have a play around with just creating some geometry very quickly. I want you to create some lines or some curves. I want you to create some surfaces. I want you to create some solids, and I want you to just play around just making some geometry. Okay? I'm going to come around. So for everybody online, just feel free to have a play around with making some geometry very quickly. And I'm just going to go around and make sure that everybody understands. So if you look here, so this is a common issue that some people are having. So if you're finding that you cannot select anything, so if I've turned my sub D tools on and I've put my selection filter to only faces, okay, I've got a problem here now that I'm only selecting faces. So I just opened that up and I've just popped it down here. So I need to make sure that all my other, so when I do this, I'll only be able to select faces, okay? And the same if I just had curves selected, it'll only be able to select curves. And it works the same way as like AutoCAD. If I drag left to right, it'll select everything that is in the box. If I drag right to left, it'll select anything that's touching the box. So you just need to make sure that your filters are turned on for all of the necessary things that you want to select. Otherwise, you may have a problem in selecting items, and you might find that you've got trouble. Okay, so I'm just going to turn those on. Do we have any questions from our online attendees? Any questions at all? If anyone does have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and, or just give a thumbs up just so we know that you're okay. Great. Did somebody have a question? Someone raise their hand? No? I was just giving a high five. Yes, sure. Go ahead. Okay. So if you want to make it into a surface. So I'm just going to quickly show you. I'm going to quickly show you the different ways that we can create those commands, that create the different items. So, for example, if I wanted to create a surface from this, it would need to be enclosed. I cannot create a surface from a single polyline, a single line. Yeah, it needs to be a closed line like this, and then I'll be able to create it. So in order to create a planar surface, I can go to Surface on the menu tabs, and I can go to see where it says Planar Curves. I can select that, and I can select my curves, press Enter, and it will create a surface. Yeah? So whatever it is you're trying to do, follow that logic. Say, all right, am I wanting to create a surface? If yes, this is what I'm going to do. Okay? So yeah, feel free to have a play around. Also, let's say, for example, I have a poly surface like this, and I want to close it at the top. What command would I be able to use, do you think? Let me just, so 1 second, let me just quickly do this. I'm just gonna, I think my sub D tools are selected. I hate when this happens. I don't have duplicates. Okay, we're good. Okay. Yeah, so let's say, for example, let me just try and get this 1 second. I don't know why. Yeah, I'll move that across. There we go. So, yeah, if you look on your menu bar, some of you might be struggling to select something. I was struggling to select that poly surface then. The reason I was struggling to select this poly surface is because in the sub D tab, my selection filter was still on. So I just need to go over to it. If you hover over anything in Rhino, it will tell you what that command does. So if I just hover over that, it says if I squeeze my left mouse button, it will turn the faces on, the filter on. If I squeeze the right mouse button, it will set the filter to none. So I want to just make sure that that is set to none. Okay, now I can select these surfaces. Yeah, so I've got my poly surface here. Right, I want to turn this into a solid. Which menu bar would I use? Which menu bar would I use? Surface? What do I want to turn it into? A solid. So which menu bar will I use? Solid. Okay, so if we go over here, I want to make it into a solid. So which menu bar? I'm going to use the solid. And so let me see if there's a command in here that allows me or looks like I might be able to like fill this hole or cap it off or, you know, finish it. Is there anything in there? Well, if I look here, there's this cap planar holes. If I click on that, boom, it's filled my planar holes and it's turned it into a solid. Okay? Does that make sense? So if I do that again, if I want to do this one, for example, if I go to solid, and I go to, solid, and I'll go to cap planar holes, I can fill that in at the end. Now, Rhino works forwards, but it also can work backwards. So let me explain what I mean by that. So do you remember how I said I can create a curve, and from that curve I can create a surface, and from that surface I can create a solid. I can also extract curves from surfaces. I can extract surfaces from solids. Okay? So let me show you how I would do that. So let's say, for example, I'm here in my model and I want to extract this face here. If I want to extract a surface, so I want to get a surface, so which command am I going to use? Surface, right? So we go to the surface command, and then I go down, and I'm going to go, let's see, surface edit tools, blend, flattening, edge tools. Okay, so I've got that. Just bear with me 1 second. So I know how to type it, so we can extract a surface. I'm just making sure that it's in here. So if yeah, so you need to press enter after you do a command. So whenever you do a command, you need to press enter afterwards. So yeah, that's typically what we would do. It might be here. Untrim, merge, soft edit. I just want to extract the surface essentially. But if it's not in there, if I can't extract it from there, blend surface, tween, surface editing tools, untrim holes. You can untrim a surface, refit, trimmed. Well, there's something called extract surface, if that makes sense. So we can extract a surface from a solid. So if I just type extract surface, I can select the surface that I want to extract, and then I can extract a surface from a solid. So let's say I want to get a curve from this surface. What command? Which tab? Curve. So let's go in the curve, and if I do curve from objects, these are all the different curves that I can create and extract from an object. Okay, so I can go curve from objects. Let's say I want to choose duplicate edge. I'm going to duplicate that edge. I'm going to bring that out. And now I've worked backwards from my geometry. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody?
Can you not just copy it by exploding the polygon?
Can you not yeah, you can explode it. So if it's a poly surface, we could explode it and we could do it that way. But there might be certain instances, for example, like let's say, for example, I have this here, and I wanted to extract just a particular part of it. Let's say that I've done a cut through of it or something like that. There might be something quite intricate that I just want to extract that one surface. So rather than exploding my whole model, I could just extract that one surface. Does that make sense? Because sometimes exploding everything is not always it can be more time consuming. So we're just all about speeding up our workflow and our processes. Okay?
Does extracting it remove the geometry from the...
It removes the geometry from here, but it doesn't. But it keeps. But like I said before, the surface remains intact, and it just creates a new curve from it. Same as copying and paste, but we're just extracting it from it. But we have all kinds of things that we can extract. So, for example, in the curve, if I do curve from objects, I'm going to show you another one actually. I like sitting down. I don't like standing up. This gets too frustrating, but it's okay. I want to show you this, for example. Let's say, for example, I've got this geometry, and I want to create, let's say it's a tower, just for argument's sake. Let's just move this across. We're just going to scale this. So let me show you, there's different ways that we can scale things. So do you remember before I was saying, with geometry, we can either edit geometry, we can transform geometry. If we want to edit this geometry, there's a couple of ways that we can do it. We can click on edit over here, and we've got these different edit commands that you would typically find, like join, explode, trim, split, rebuild. It's kind of things that we would find in AutoCAD. But with our gumball, what we can actually do is we've got move here, we've got rotate here, and we've got scale here as well. Okay? So if you want to scale something just very quickly, you can just start to scale it. So let's say we create a tower out of that, for example. And let's say I wanted to create floor slabs in this tower. There's a very quick command that I can use to extract curves from that geometry, from that solid. So I can say, right, Rhino, I want you to give me all of the curves at a certain intersection all the way through this model. And the way that would work is I would use curve, because I want to get curves, remember? Curve from objects. And this time I'm going to use the contour tool, for example. And if I just click on this, it's saying, so within our command line at the top, we need to remember that if we just follow what the command line says, we cannot go wrong. If you're having a problem in Rhino, it's because you're not listening to Rhino. And Rhino's telling you what it wants, and it's usually telling you in the command line. And if you're having an issue with it, it's because you're not listening to what the software is telling you. So let's just follow the instructions very, very simply within the command line and do what it says. So it says select the objects for the contours. Press enter when done. So I'm going to press enter. So now it's saying contour base plane. So for this one, I'm going to go in the front view this time. I'm going to just change my view. Just bear with me. Okay, I'm just going to select, actually I'll just select here at the bottom. And then it says the direction perpendicular to the contour planes. So perpendicular. So if I want my contour planes to be horizontal, I need to select my next point vertical. So I'm going to select my next point at the top. And then it says the distance between. Let me just see for argument's sake. I'm not sure how big my model is, so 1 second. I'm just going to measure. This is where the Analyze tool comes in. So I can measure the distance, for example, from there to there. And it tells me it's 294 millimeters. Okay. So it's 294 millimeters. So let's say it's 294 meters, 294 meters, let's say. So if I wanted to create those contour lines again, what would I do? Curve, because I want to get a curve. I'm going to go to the curve from objects, because I want to get it from an object. I'm going to use contour, and then I'm going to use this. Select it, do what Rhino says. So select the objects for the contour, and press enter when done. Then I select the base, then I select the top. Yeah? And now I'm just going to say, if it's two, let's say 3. Boom. I've been able to create all of those contour lines, which will then can create floor slabs. I'm going to do them a little bit smaller because I don't like that. So if I select the top and bottom again, I'm going to do them maybe 6 this time. And so if this was my tower, now I've been able to create all of these lines or floor slabs, and they behave independently. So if I select all those now, let's say I want to turn these into solid floor plates. What tab would I use for that? Solid. It's gonna sound like monotonous what I'm saying, but I'm trying to drill into you that this is the way to do it, and you're never gonna forget. So I want to create a solid from it. So I'm going to go to solid, and then I'm going to go to extrude planar curves straight, and let's just say I do it 0.5.
For architecture, we very rarely ever get to use surfaces.
Say that again, sorry.
Sorry, architecture is very rarely going to use surfaces. Everything we're doing is solid.
It's a solid. Yeah, exactly. But the workflow is what we're actually going to be mainly focusing on. And the other thing that I'll reiterate with this is, Revit is designed for architecture. Rhino isn't. It's a geometry creating software, and it uses platonic geometry to create what we then say is architecture. The only thing that makes it architecture is when we start to apply scale to it, and maybe put a human in. Then we can start to see, well, I can tell because of the scale that is now architecture. So that, with 3 commands, I was able to create a tower and floor plates, or what would become floor plates, just very, very quickly. So that's just an example of how we can use a solid to create curves, and then how we can then use curves to then create solids. So it's kind of like a forwards, backwards workflow. So we go forwards to create geometry, then we go backwards to extract our curves, then we go forwards to create more geometry, and then we might go backwards with something else, and then we're always constantly pulling between the curves, surfaces, solids, and working in that way. Okay? Well, let me show you some other commands. I'm just going to very quickly show you the transform command and what we can do with those. So let's say, for example, I've got my hypothetical tower here. In order to copy it across, I'm just going to start dragging across and hit Alt 1 time. Boom. And then it's like that.
So when you scale it with the center point.
Yeah,
Scale it uniformly.
so if I wanted to scale it uniformly, what I would usually use, as I'm scaling that, if I hold Shift, it will scale it uniform. So if I hold Shift whilst I'm scaling. Also, I can scale. There is a scale command. So I can obviously use the scale command as well, which is here. And I can scale 3D. So I can go scale. I'm going to go choose my second reference point. I can scale like that. If I go to the transform tool again, I can also do scale 1D, for example. So I can select it. And then I can select the bottom and then the top. And then this is going to scale one direction. So scale in one direction. So there's lots of different scale commands. So this is the different transform commands that we can use. So our gumball lets us do some very quick iterations. If we want to do more specific iterations, like we want to scale it by 2, we'll go to our transform, scale 3D. We can click on the bottom there. I can then, you see where it says the reference scale. I can type 2, press enter, and it's scaled it by 2. Let's say I want to scale it by half again. I'll just do that same thing again. I'll go to transform. I'll scale 3D. select the bottom corner, 0.5 this time, press enter, and it scaled it by 0.5. Okay? There's some other transform tools that we can also use. We can use copy, rotate, shear, mirror, symmetry. So if I want to use the mirror command, for example, if I select this, and I select the axis that I want to mirror it in, I can mirror this. Let's say I want multiple towers, I can array them. So I can say, I want this tower, but I want to repeat it a number of times. I can use the array command, and I can either do a linear array, where I can specify, you know, how many I want the array to go by. Let's say I put 6 in. It's going to allow me to array 6 times. I can also, within the transform command, I can do another array. I can do a polar array, where I can go, right, I want to array this around the center of this. So I'm going to turn my center snap on, and I'm just going to hover over here. So it's going to hover in the center. And then if I do like 8 items, and I specify 360 degrees, it can array it around like so. I can also do a rectangular array. So let's say I'm creating a grid system, for example. I can go here again in Rhino. I can go to transform again. I can go to array. And this time I can do a rectangular array. And I need to specify how many I want in each direction. So let's say I want 6 in the X direction, 6 in the Y direction, and only 1 in the Z direction because I don't want it to go any further. I can then begin to array these guys in a grid system, like so. Yeah? So they're the array commands that are found within the transform menu. We can also twist, bend, and taper. So let's say I want to create a twisted tower. Okay? So I'm going to take this piece of geometry that I have, and we're going to create a twisted tower now. So we're going to twist our geometry. The way that I would do that is using the transform command. I'm going to take in Rhino as well, you can either select your geometry first, then run the command, or run the command, and it will tell you in the command line to select your geometry. Yeah? So I can go to transform, in the menu bar, and this time I'm going to go to twist, and it says select the objects that you want to twist. I'm going to select this object here. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to go from the center down here. If I just go, let me just make sure my object snap of center is the only one that's selected. Do you see how this line, this is the smart track, by the way. This is how the smart track works. You see how it's like creating like an invisible line that it constrains me to. If I turn smart track off, it will get rid of that, so that will no longer appear. If I turn smart track on, then I'll be able to do that. So if I turn smart track off, if I go to the center, now if I go to the center at the top, it's going to ask me for the first angle, and I can then begin to twist this geometry like so. And now I've created like a twisted tower. You see? Yep. So now I've created something twisted that I can use. I can bend stuff. So let's say I go to transform command again. I can taper things. I can stretch them. And if I taper this, for example, I can go to the top, go to the bottom, then go to the top. Then it's going to ask for the start distance. And then I can start to taper this out, like so. So that's the taper tool. Yes? The twist? Yeah, sure, of course. So if you want to learn how to twist, it's in the transform command. And it's just here. You see twist, bend, taper, stretch, flow along. So we've got twist. I'm going to select my object. I'm going to press enter. Then it says, where's the start of the twist axis? So the start of my twist axis, I want to be at the bottom of the center. So I'm going to go to the bottom, and I'm going to make sure that center is turned on. And then it's going to snap to the bottom of the center. And then it's asking from the end of my twist axis, and I want it to be the top. So in this instance, I'm going to do the top. and then an angle reference. I'm just going to drag out. It doesn't really matter. And then I can start to move this around as much as I want, and it'll twist. Okay? So that's the transform commands. I'm going to give you now, let's say 5-10 minutes just to play around. And remember, if we want to create curves, we use the curve. If we want to create surfaces, we use surfaces. If we want to create solids, we use solid. If we want to transform our geometry, which I've just shown you how to do, we're manipulating the geometry that is already there. That's how we would when we would use the transform command to do that. So play around with twisting things, shaping things, creating curves, creating surfaces, creating solids. And I'm just going to come around and make sure that everyone understands what they're doing. And if we've got any questions as well, I'll come around. Yeah, so let's follow the logic then. So let's say that I'm not here, and you think, how did he do the contours? Let's use some reverse engineering. What are we wanting to create, first of all? Yeah, but are they floor slabs? They're not floor slabs, are they? We want to create solids. So in order to create solids, we first need to create curves. So in order to create curves, we need to use the curve menu. Okay? So if I wanted to create, let's say I wanted to contour this twisted tower now. If I go over here to the curve command, and I'm going to do curve from objects. So feel free to take a picture of that. This session is being recorded as well, just so you know. So this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back over it. But here, this is how we do it, curve from objects. And if you go to where it says contour, can you see that? Then we're just going to go, and it says select the objects that you want to contour. So I'm going to select this object, and then I'm going to press enter. And then it says the contour plane base point. Sometimes it's easier to work from the front view if you want to be in the front view. But even if you're working in here, as long as you have your ortho snap on, I can either snap to the center of here, which is fine. So I'm going to snap to the center there. And then it's going to ask for the direction perpendicular. So I'm going to just snap to the center again, up here. And then it's going to ask for the distance that you want them to appear. So I'm going to just leave it at 6, because that's what we had before. Or maybe I'll do 7.5 this time. And then it'll just run that command and contour. Did it work? Do you want to have a go? Have a go at doing it, and I'll come around and make sure. So that's how we can create our contours from there. I'm going to show you in a minute how we can create facades and things like that. Just very quickly. So just have a little play around, just for 5 minutes while I go around and just speak to people individually. What I'll do is I'll come there, and there, and there. Yeah. Snap to the center. So if it's not letting you snap to the center, you need to make sure that your object snaps are on. This is where it's going to snap, and make sure the center is on. That should be. Yeah. So go back. Click on disable for a second. You just have to kind of move around it. Is this a twist? Yeah. Now do the same again at the top. You do have to go to the outer edge. Yeah. You've got to go from the outer edge for it to find the center. Yeah, so just click out anywhere. Just click. And then you can just start to I'll come back to you. extrude it and go to surface again. You extrude straight. Then you can select the curve that wants to extrude. Yeah, so right now they're individual surfaces, so you need to join them together first. So you need to join them, otherwise they won't be able to work. So, solid. You need to make sure it's joined. So if you try and do it, I'll go back. Select all surfaces, join them together, and then do cap plane. Yes. Cap comes off. So let's follow the instructions. Let's see. So we're going to create some curves, right? Curve. Curve of object. In all my years of teaching Rhino, no one's ever broken it. It's okay, we'll figure it out. Going okay? Oh, look at that. Awesome. So if you go to your and then when you click on it, now good. So start so when you're trying to center an object, when you're using the center snap, you need to go to the outside of the object for it to find the center. So it'll only find the center when you click the outside. Okay? I'm going around and I'm seeing some pretty cool stuff happening. Some people have done some arrays, which is great. What's that? So what you probably need to do is you just need to work it out. So you have to extract. So you can, actually, I'll show everyone how to do that. Okay, there's a couple of tools as well that we can use within Rhino, where we can begin to loft surfaces. Does anyone know what lofting means? Does that mean anything to anybody? Okay, it's no problem. So let's say, for example, I have two curves. I'll just take these two curves, for example. And what I can do is there's a command where I can create a surface from these two curves, where I can loft between them. So if I click on loft here, and then select one curve and then the other curve, and it'll create a seam line, I can then loft between those two curves, and it will create geometry in between. Okay? That's the loft command. So we can loft. Now this is where it starts to get pretty cool, because let's say we create some pretty organic geometry. So let's say we've created something like Zaha-esque, you know, like from the, I say Zaha, but you know, let's just say I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to, you know, I'm just going to change it a little bit. I'm going to bring this here. So I want to create a surface here. So if I click on surface and I click loft, then we could select this surface and then select that surface, and it will loft between those two surfaces. Click OK. Yeah? So it will create a loft. So that's the loft command. Do you want me to do that again? Yeah? So I've created just two curves, for example. I'm going to go to surface, and I'm going to go to the loft command, and I'm going to select these two surfaces, and I'm going to hit loft and press enter, and it will loft between them. Now watch what happens when I select one end of the curve, and then for the other curve I select the other end of the curve. What starts to happen is my geometry becomes twisted. Because what it's done is, it's intelligent enough to understand, it's going to select one end of one curve and then do my start point from the other end of the other curve. So the surface is then twisting on itself. So there might be instances we don't want that, you know? So we need to make sure that we align our curves, or our curves align. So we can just click on there, align curves, and then if you just click on the one of the curves that you want to align, then we can align it that way. Also, the different styles that we've got, we can do it loose, we can do it tight, we can do it straight. But there's so many different ways that we can use that we can use the loft command. Okay? Does that answer that question? Yeah. So that's how we can begin to start to loft different surfaces. So exactly. So the way that you've just done that there, that's exactly how you would do that. You can extract curves from it, and then we can begin to loft between those curves to create new geometry. There's also a sweep command. So let me tell you what that does. So let's say I have a separate line. I'm just going to put snap back on end. Let's say I have another line here. Let me just go. It's messed up. It's going to go that way. I'm just going to go up. So let's say I've created that line there. I have a command called sweep, where I can go to a surface, and you see where it says sweep one rail. So I can take one curve and I can sweep it along another curve to create a surface. So sweep one rail, it says select the rail, press enter. It selects the rail and then selects the sweep object and then press enter. You see? It swept this curve along that curve like so. So that's the sweep command. So we've got loft, we've done loft, we've done sweep. And this is, let's say for example you do want to create some pretty cool geometry. You know, let's say I've got this one here, and I want to, like a car panel for example, they'll use a lot of this in automotive design for example, with like car panels and stuff. This is where they will use a command like this to sweep an object along a. So this time I have two curves. So now if I want to sweep it along two curves, because if I do the sweep one, it's just going to do this curve, right? And it's going to keep this the same. If I want to do this whole thing, I need to use the sweep two curves command. So I'm going to use the sweep two curves command this time. And I'm going to go here to surface, because I'm creating a surface. Sweep two rails. Select the first rail. Selects the second rail. Selects the sweep. Press enter. And then it sweeps that along that curve. Okay? Any questions about that? So that's how we can create more different types of surfaces. Now, let's say I wanted to create that into a solid. Let's say I wanted to give that some thickness, for example. How would I create a solid out of this? Where would I go? Solid, yeah. So let's go to solid. And then this time I'm going to choose the offset command. So I can offset this solid, and I can select it. And then it says press enter when done. And then I can specify the distance that I want this to offset. So let's just say it's like 6, maybe 20, because it's quite big. And then I've offset that. So now it has some thickness. So do you remember Zaha Hadid's Haydar Aliyev Center? This is how they will have done it. Or this is how we can accomplish that. We can use just sweep. We can sweep two rails, or we can loft, or we can sweep curves. And if you build that up, we've got the Haydar Aliyev Center, essentially.
I can tell you now that is exactly how that was done, because I worked on that.
There you go. There you go.
So that is exactly how we did it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you can start to manipulate the geometry, and as I'm dragging it, if I just hit Alt, you can start to create like different facade panels and things like that. However you want to use that. Okay. So we've covered how to create curves. We've covered how to create surfaces. We've covered how to create solids. And we've also covered how we can go backwards and create surfaces from solids and curves from solids. There's another really useful tool that we have in Rhino that helps us to be able to create 2D line work from 3D objects. Okay? And this is one that I've used extensively. But before we use that, let's just make something a little bit more sexy on our building. Let's just do something sexy on it. Or let's create something from scratch. I'm just going to delete all this stuff on my window. You can keep all of your stuff. And I'm just going to very quickly create an ellipse. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to change my my Rhino units to meters, because I want to work in meters, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So you see here at the bottom of the screen, we have the millimeters, where it says millimeters. If you just right click on that, you can choose unit settings. And within the unit settings, we can change that to meters. So I can change that to meters here. I click OK. It's going to ask me if I want to scale my model. I don't really have any geometry in there right now, but if you do scale the model, what will happen is it will scale everything as if it was a meter. So one millimeter becomes 1 meter. So that's essentially what will happen if you do that. So now I'm working in meters. I'm going to show you very quickly how the layers work, because what we'll do is we'll just create some geometry now, but we'll put it in different layers so that we can create our model doing something a little bit cleaner than what we might normally do. I'm going to start by creating an ellipse. So you can follow along with me if you want. So click on the ellipse command here, or where else might I be able to find the ellipse command? Surface, is it a surface? It's a curve. So I would go in the curve command and I would find ellipse, or I can type ellipse in here. Ellipse, yeah? And I'm going to just create an ellipse. And the sense that I want it from, this is where I can start to type more specifically where I want the geometry to be and how big I want it to be. So I want to start this from 0. So in the Euclidean planes, we've got X, Y, and Z. And right at the very center of X, Y, and Z, we have 0, 0, 0. That's where everything converges to 1 point, 0. So I always start my model typically from 0, because then I always have a reference point for whatever I do. So I'm going to just type 0 and press enter. This is where I'm starting. Now, you see how I can move my mouse around freely? I'm just going to turn ortho on, and then it will start to just move it in 90-degree increments. So that just gives me a little bit more control over this ellipse that I'm going to create. And let's say that I create a 20-meter ellipse. I'm going to type 20 and press enter. And then it's going to constrain my line to 20, you see, until I click my mouse. Then when I click my mouse, it's going to then start my second curve. You see that? But this time I'm going to type 10, and I'm going to press enter, and then I'm going to click. And then I have this ellipse here. I'm going to zoom extents. So in order to zoom extents, then all I did was I can either go up here and go to zoom, and zoom extents, or I can type, which is what I did, zoom, and then if you see there it says E, so I type E, press enter, and it zooms extents. So now I'm going to extrude this guy up. I'm going to type extrude, curve, or I can go in my menu bar along the top, I can go to curve, and I can go to extrude curve, or extrude, sorry, I'm not making a curve, my mistake. What am I making? A surface. I'm making a surface, so I then need to use my extrude curve from here. And I'm just going to extrude it, let's extrude it up like 100, about 200 meters, let's say. And press enter. So I extruded that up 200. Okay? So now we have this guy here. So if I want to make this into a solid, what could I do? So go to the solid menu, yeah, and then go to cap. So it's cap planar holes. Select the object. Boom, I've capped it off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist it. So I'll do a twisted tower. So what I want to do is twist it. So where would I go to twist this tower? Transform. And then where am I going to go? Twist, which is just here. And then I'm going to select the objects that I want to twist. And then I'm going to make sure that my center is ticked on. And then I'm going to come over here and just start my center point down here at the bottom. So make sure in your O snap, make sure O snap is on. And you go to the outside of the object, remember, to find the center. We go to the outside of the object, boom, we've got the center. And then I go to the other end and I go to the center again. And then this time I'm just going to rotate it like 90 degrees. So then we end up with this like twisted tower type typology. Okay? So let's say I want to create a facade on this. Let's say I'm like, you know what, it would be really cool if I create some shape or something that I can get to go along this tower. I'm going to show you how we can do that. So in order to learn how to do this, we need to use a command called unroll surface. So we need to unroll it. Okay? So if I type unroll SRF, unroll surface, and I select the surface that I want it to unroll. It won't allow me to unroll doubly curved surfaces. Okay, so what we need to do instead, if it won't allow me to unroll it, is I just need to create a rectangle down here. Just anywhere down here. I just need to create a surface, and I need to create a rectangle. So if I just go to surface, and if I go plane, let's see. I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to select the rectangle over here, and I'm just going to create a surface rectangle. So I've created the curve. So I've just created a rectangle just from over here. If I want to create that into a surface, how would I do it? Go to the surface command, and what would I choose? Planar curves. Did I hear someone say? Yeah? Planar curves. So I go to planar curves, wherever that is. There it is, planar curves. And I select it, and I press enter, and now it's created this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some kind of facade that I'm going to then project onto my tower. So I'm going to use I've just got a little bit of a love affair with hexagons. I like hexagons. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a hexagon here. Just one hexagon. And if you want to change the number of polygon sides, we do it up here. So what I did is I went to polygon, which is just here. I clicked on it, and I changed the number of sides to 6. I press enter. And then I've got this hexagon right here. So let me just, now, if I want to offset that, I'm going to go curve, offset, offset curve. And then I can offset this, let's say, 10. No, maybe too much. 3, 4, 5. I'm going to offset it 5 in this instance. So I've offset that 5. Now I can take those curves that I've created, and I want to make them into a solid. How would I do that? Solid, extrude planar curve, straight, boom. I've created that into a solid now. I'm going to do Z, A. So now let's say that I take these guys. I'm going to copy, just going to type the copy command, and I'm just going to copy this a few times. Up here. Yeah? Let's just say, I'm just going to copy this a few times. So this is like a manual way of doing what we could do something like this in Grasshopper. Then I can select all of those and I can copy again. And now I can copy from this corner here. And I'll just copy it to this corner here. Yeah. So we end up with something that looks like that. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just make sure that my rectangle covers all of this, because I'm going to use it to project it onto my tower using the flow along surface command. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure this rectangle is somewhat the same size, and you'll see why in a minute. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a command called flow along surface. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to transform. I'm going to go to the transform tab, and then do you see flow along surface? Yeah. So we see transform, flow along surface. I'm going to select the objects that I want to flow along the surface, which are going to be these guys here. And then I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to press select my base surface. So it's saying select your base surface, which is going to be this one here. And then it says select your target surface. And I'm going to select round about the same, like the bottom corner, like that. And then you're going to see that that is going to flow along that surface. So I've created like a facade. If it was perfectly in the right size as well as this object, it would flow along that perfectly. Let me just quickly do that actually, just to show you. So do you see what's happened there, what I've been able to do? So I've been able to flow these objects here along this surface. And I can change the orientation of it as well. But let me just show you how it works. For example, if I just do a normal cylinder, I'm just going to do a normal cylinder. And I'm just going to unroll this surface. And when we unroll the surface, what it does is it unrolls it like so. So for laser cutting, the unroll surface command is really useful. Because what I was able to do is I took that there, and if I went to create that out of card or paper, if I do unroll surface, it then lays them out like so. Then I can take it to a laser cutter, or I can take it somewhere, and then I can fabricate that. Yeah, so that I've unrolled the surface. Now, if I put these guys perfectly onto that geometry, it should wrap around it perfectly. You see this here? So if that went along here perfectly, then it would wrap around the geometry perfectly. So if I just go in the top, why is my top view not working? It's weird. I'm just going to select these guys. I'm just going to copy. I'm going to go to here, and then I'm just going to keep copying just really quick, just so you can see. Yep. And then I'm just going to scale. I'm going to just move this to the corner. And I'm going to just make sure that near is turned on, because I can go to the nearest point, which is there. Then I can go here and go to the nearest point. So now that's right in the corner, like so. Now what I can do is I can take that and I can scale. And I'm going to go from that corner there. I'm going to turn Smart Track on. So I can like use Smart Track there. And I'm going to scale that like that. Yeah, so you see? And now if I just get these guys, for example, and I just do copy, and I just copy these guys up. No, I'm going to go from that corner there, and I'm going to copy to that corner there, and then there we go. So I'll just get rid of that top one there. Okay, so let's say I've got this guy now. So in principle, it should perfectly flow along that surface. But let's see. So if I go to transform, and I go, let me just explode this really quick, actually. Yeah. So I'm going to go to transform, flow along surface. I'm going to select all the objects that I want to flow. Press enter. I'm going to select the base surface near the corner. And then it says select your target surface. Yeah, it didn't quite meet there. I know why. Because it needs to overlap. It needs to overhang. Because there's an overhang here. Does that make sense? It does. Well, it doesn't have to be. Because I'll show you what it means. What I do in a minute. This actually needs to overhang here by half. So scale. If I do scale, it needs to go from there. I'll do scale 1D. It goes from there, and then I want to go from this edge actually. I want this edge here to be at the end. So it should actually be like that. So now, if I just take that geometry that I created, and then just get rid of these guys really quick. And then I try it again. I'm going to try it again. So I'm going to do flow along surface. Flow along surface. Select the objects that you want to flow. Press enter. Select the base surface near the edge. And then select the target surface. I think it's because I scaled it, it wasn't absolutely perfect, but you get the general idea, the essence of what it is that I'm trying to do. So now, for example, like I have this potential facade that I can work with, you know, and I've created like a pretty cool honeycomb tower, for example. Okay? So hopefully that's not too much. But I've just done Rhino level 1 and level 2 in the last 2 hours. So I've shown you every tool that you might need initially. And I've even shown you a few extra tools that are really useful. But your ability as a designer is constrained by your skills. So your skills ultimately will complement your ability to design. And your ability to design will ultimately complement your skills. And it works like that. So as you learn these skills, you can start to see what's available to you to then create. Because I could see this becoming a really cool tower, you know, if we did something really cool with it. And that's just from using a few very simple commands in Rhino. I'm just going to very quickly show you in the last 5 minutes just how to do the make 2D command. So let's say I take this guy here, and I'm going to type make 2D. And I can start to create drawings from this by going in like the first or third angle projection. It will give me all of my different drawings. And it'll give me a 3D view as well. And if I click OK, what you'll see now starts to happen is that we'll be able to create 2D drawings from our 3D model. And it will create like curves from the geometry. So it's going to take elevations, a plan, and also a 3D view. So you see here now. So let's say, for example, top, if I just go over here. So you see now what I've been able to create. I now have elevations of that and a 3D and a plan. So we've got 2 elevations, a 3D perspective view, and we have also a plan of that. Okay, so let's say I wanted to do it in a more comprehensive way, where I go, you know, I want to make some more drawings out of this. I'm going to go, right, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go set view, and I'm going to make it isometric this time. And I'm going to go northwest. So now you see this is an isometric drawing. So now if I do make 2D, but I'm only going to, this time I'm only going to do that one view. Just that one view, and click OK. And now it's created this perfectly isometric drawing. Okay, and then also we can begin to put these in layers. So for example, if I want to put these into a particular layer, I can just go to there. I can go to Edit, and then my Layers tab. And I can change the object's layer, and I can put it on layer 1, for example. And then I can make sure that it appears as per the layer. Display color, I'm going to put the layer 1 display color by layer, and it will display the color by what layer it's on. So we can use layers as well. The other thing that we can do is make layers within layers in Rhino. So we can make sub-layers. So let's say I had a 2D layer. So I put all my 2D line work in a layer. I can then create a sub-layer that says like elevations, for example. And I can also just go to Edit, go to Layers, and change object layer, layer 1. I'll make that like red for all intents and purposes. And then I'll change the view settings to be by layer. So it will then appear how it is in the layer. And that's how the layers work. Very similar to AutoCAD. Very similar. Okay? Any questions?
What if you wanted to take like a section?
Okay, this is a great question. So if I want to do a section of the building, I have this amazing tool in Rhino. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to set my view back to perspective. And let's say I want to do a section through this building here. Let me just contour it real quick. So I've got some floor slabs. I'm just going to go to contour. And then I'm going to choose my base curve. And I'm going to choose my top curve. And then I'll do 7.5 between each one. And I'll just extrude those up. 0.5, let's say. So I've got some slabs. So in Rhino, we've got what we call a clipping plane or a clipping section. They don't have it in the one that I've got, but it doesn't matter. I'll just put a clipping plane on. In Rhino 8, we have a clipping section, but I'll just put a clipping plane on right now. So I'm going to put a clipping plane on here, and I'm just going to go. Just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to try and see what's wrong with these guys. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put the clipping plane on. I'll put it in the front view. So I'm just going to put the clipping plane on here. Okay, so wherever I move this now, I can move it and it'll clip through this object, but I need to turn it on this tab here. So I need to turn it on the perspective view. So it's a clipping plane, like so. So when I put this clipping plane on, it will clip through my object, like this. So I can even do animations like this, you know. And if I turn it to Arctic mode, just so you can get a better idea of it. You see what's happening here? So now I've created like what could be perceived as a section. If I just hide this clipping plane really quick, what I can then do is in the front view, I'm going the front view. I'm going to turn this to Arctic mode. And you see I've got this. I can select that. I can type make 2D of that view. Press enter. And it's going to run the command. So it's going to go. And then I'll just go back to shading mode. And then what we've done is we've created a section view of the make 2D. So we've created like section lines that we could then bring into AutoCAD. I could also bring it into Illustrator, for example, and go, right, I'll just export. I'll just do a quick, what I'll do is, I'll do view capture. So I'll go view capture to file, where I'm going to capture the view there, and I can change like the settings and the aspect ratio and the size of my settings and stuff. So I can do a quick rendering of that. I can then bring it into Illustrator, overlay my lines over the top of it, so I've got some like depth to my section, so that I can overlay them within Illustrator. So that's like a very fast way that you could do quick sections. Okay, does that make sense? Does that answer the question? Well, I'm happy to do Q&A, so everyone online, I'm happy to stick around. So I'm happy to do Q&A now for the last little bit. So I'll do some Q&A. So yeah, go ahead.
So this is quite similar to SketchUp or software, but it's way better. I guess the only sort of thing that I think of at the moment by SketchUp is better is probably the measurements on it.
So
is there any way of checking and measuring?
yeah, there is. So you remember before I said that there's some analysis tools. So analyze tools. We do have all that. And because if you're happy for me to just carry on for a minute, I'm going to show you how I could do this more architectural. So for example, let's say within this model, I'm getting really like confused why these guys are not letting me do it, but just a bit strange. 1 second, I'm just going to maximize that. So if I go in my top viewport now, I have this line work that I've just created. Okay, if I go to transform, if I go to dimension, I can create a linear dimension, and I can put that on there, and that'll tell me exactly like the dimensions that I've got. Yeah. So within the dimension tab, I can put as many dimensions as I want on here. You know, I can measure stuff. I can also analyze stuff. So if I want to analyze the distance just for my own benefit, I can go analyze distance. I'm going to analyze that from there to there. And then in my command bar, you listening? It'll tell me that it's 95 meters from there to there. That makes sense. So then we can go to dimension as well, and we can put all kinds of dimensions on. We could put a text block in here, like say this is a text block. Click OK. And we can put text blocks in there. We can also put area dimensions. We can put leader lines, so we can go like, I'll turn ortho off for a second. I can do leader lines, where I can say,
Is that following 3D?
this is a leader line. These are all 2D now, so these will all remain 2D. If we wanted to do 3D text, there is a possibility to do it, and we do that over here. But 3D text behaves differently than 2D text. So 2D text will behave like annotation and so on. So we can annotate our models and we can begin to make them more architectural. Definitely. Does that answer that question a little bit?
It does. I guess the only follow-up is when you're exporting that, how do you do it without just exporting everything on the page? So like PWG or PDF, so you can find out.
So check this out. If I go to the top view, I can go, let's say I want to select that. And I go to File, Export Selected. I can now export this as a DWG file. Let's say, for example, I do all my drawings in Rhino. So I do all of my annotations, my drawings. When I do an architectural job, I do them all in Rhino. And the way that I do that is, I'm just going to have to close this for a second. Just because it's lost my tabs. It's just a little bit buggy that for a second. But if I just show you this very quickly, Rhino session. So I'm just going to say that to my desktop. I'll just close it. I'm just going to reopen my Rhino. Rhino 7. Maybe I'll open one of these, like Villa Savoie. I'll open this one. So this was like Villa Savoie. Let's say, I'll just turn all these on. One second, file, open. I'll just open it as Villa Savoie and I'll show you how we can make actual drawings out of all of this. We'll go to chapter 5, finishing touches. There we go. So let's say, for example, I wanted to do some drawings out of this. Okay, I can go into, let me just get rid of these guys here and those guys. So, I'm going to get rid of all the curves. So what I can do is, I've got the Villa Savoie here by Le Corbusier, yeah? If I want to create drawings out of this, I'll just go, select them all, make 2D, for example. I'm going to go to third angle, okay, and then I'm going to let it just do its thing. And it's just running the command now, so it's creating the 2D lines. Rhino 8 is much faster doing this because it's been improved, the way that they create the 2D lines. So let's say I've got these 2D lines now, all this 2D line work. I've got my plan, I've got my elevations, and I have my 3D. Okay? What I can do down here is I can click on here and I can create a new layout and call it page 1, and I'm going to do a custom one because for some reason A1's not there, and I'm going to do 841 by 594. Detail count I can do as one detail count, which is okay for now. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to double click in here, and then I can now, this is my paper space. So if I'm in here, this is my sheet of paper. That's what it looks like. I can then click inside my model space in my paper space, and I can decide what I want to put onto this sheet. So I can go here like so, and if I want to be more specific and say I want this to be 1 to 100, for example, I'll do 1 to 0.1. There you go. So that's the scale now. Now if I go to File, Print, and if I change this to Landscape, let's go to Properties. I need to change my paper properties because, let's say that's the size of the A1. I can then begin to export this black and white. You know, I can change all of these settings, I can put margins on, and then I can export that as an actual drawing.
So, is there any way how SketchUp is better than Rhino?
In my honest opinion, okay, I'll say this. I started out using SketchUp, right? But once I knew Rhino, I never picked up SketchUp ever again.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a case of I didn't like SketchUp or I thought SketchUp was a bad software. It was like, if I can do everything I need to do in Rhino, then why do I need SketchUp? And because I'm working with NURBS geometry, which is much cleaner geometry, it makes it better for me. Now, are there tools that I like in SketchUp? Yeah, I like to push and pull stuff. You know, I think that's like a cool part of my workflow sometimes. So I use other softwares for that kind of thing. That is like Rhino, but like I can push and pull. Like Fusion, for example, can use NURBS, but we can push and pull geometry. We can, you know, it's non-destructive, whereas Rhino's destructive in its workflow unless we use Grasshopper, for example. So, you know, that's my opinion. You know, there are firms that use SketchUp and they get along fine and it works, no problem. But if you want to work at some of the bigger firms that do more organic geometry or like Big, for example, they only use Rhino. Rhino is their bread and butter, you know?
Yeah. I mean, our BIM manager said that we should only do facades on Rhino and then do all internals on Revit. But
So-
we haven't actually got to.
So I would say the same thing. And there is Rhino inside Revit as well. So now I'm going to do a course in the near future where I'm going to show you how to use Rhino inside Revit. And how you can then use Revit inside Rhino. So we can create that crazy tower that we created in Rhino. We can bring it into Revit. We can create a facade family that does our hexagon facades. We can give it materiality. We can do all those things in Revit. We can bring it back into Rhino. We can change things, and we go back into Revit. So that's one of the beautiful things about the Rhino Revit polarity now. They've created it in such a way that we can use Rhino inside Revit. But yeah, that's just my opinion though. My opinion is, when I learned Rhino, having learned SketchUp, I didn't touch SketchUp again because of the type of geometry that I want to create, you know? So, but SketchUp has, trust me, it has its place within architectural design, as it has its place in architectural understanding as a starting point for you. It's great. It's a great stepping stone. If you want to then take it to another level, then we start learning Rhino, and then we can really use and go to another level, is my experience. Because SketchUp's also a mesh modeling software. This is NURBS. So it's like saying, you know, what's better, Illustrator or Photoshop? And it's like, well, they're two different softwares. One uses raster, and one uses vectors. So it's like, you know, SketchUp uses mesh modeling, Rhino uses NURBS, which can be much cleaner geometry. Okay? Any other questions? Go ahead.
How do I add scale?
So if you want to add scale to the drawing, you would have to do it manually. So the only way that you could possibly do that, I have it already laid out, for example. So for example, I've created CAD blocks, like I've got like my company logo here, you know, I've got already built in. So if you wanted to create a scale though, because we know this is 1 to 100, for example. Even within our model space, you can create like a scale bar if you want. And let's say we turn ortho on, and let's say that's like 1 meter, click, and then 0.5, for example. But you'd have to manually do it, but once you've set it up once, you always have them, if that makes sense. What's that, sorry?
You can have things out of like the scale board.
Yeah, of course you can, but you'd have to create, nothing exists in Rhino until you create it. It's not like Revit, where you can just grab something from the top and go boom. But, remember I showed you food for Rhino? There is like loads of different tools that we can use. Like for example, there's like an ArchiCAD type thing. that you can use within Rhino that uses a little bit of BIM, but it's not quite like Revit, but it still uses it for architectural. So there's loads of different resources and tools. And also I can put my dimensions on here as well. So let's say I want to annotate my drawing. You know, I can put my drawings on here. And if I want to change how they're represented, then I can just go up here to the edit, object properties, just over here, and I can change how I want them to appear. So millimeter large, the height, etc., etc. And I can edit the style. So if I want it to have more functions or more decimal places, for example, then I could do that, adapt all that in there. So that's how you might do that. Okay? Any other questions? That's been a pretty intense session and a lot to take in. My advice now is, you will not remember everything that I say, but you'll remember what you do from what I say. So my advice is, go away now and practice. Play with it. You know, you're doing nobody any harm by opening it up on your computer and just playing. And just have a play around. And just create stuff. Be creative. You know, use these functions and commands. And the way that I always look at it is kind of like power combos that you have like in a computer game or something. It's like you'll start to generate your own power combos where you go, right, I know what the power combo is for create 4 slabs in a tower. It's like this, boom, 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 and then away you go. And if you just do that with everything that you do, is like create these like little power combos where you go boom, 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 boom. I know exactly how to do it. There you go, done. Super fast, and you'll get super fast, super efficient. But you only will get better by practicing. Yeah? You will not remember anything that I've taught you today unless you let that learning sink in by going away and practicing what I've taught today. So my advice is, I'm putting this video on. Feel free to go back over it. Play with Rhino. I promise you, the power of it. I've only shown a small potential of the power of it today. But hopefully it's enough to get you know, understanding and to help you to understand how you can start to use it within your own design workflow. Okay? Thank you so much for all your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.